Doctor Second. Originated by Roger Hargreaves. Written and illustrated by Adam Hargreaves. Read by Chris Rush. The Doctor straightened his bow tie and stepped out of the TARDIS. Interesting, he murmured. It's a museum, said Victoria, following the Doctor. Why are we here? I'm not sure, but the TARDIS brought us here. And if the TARDIS brought us here, it brought us here for good reason. A very good reason. It's a shame that the TARDIS can't just tell us what that good reason is, said Jamie. It's not very helpful. What? Gasped the Doctor. I wouldn't have anyone suggesting that the TARDIS is in any way deficient. It is a magnificent machine. The Doctor was very proud of the TARDIS. I was just saying, it does have a habit of dumping us in the middle of danger and then leaving us to it. The Doctor glared at Jamie and gave the TARDIS a pat. Now keep your eyes peeled, said the Doctor. What for? Asked Jamie. Things, Jamie. Things that look unusual. Everything looks unusual, replied Jamie. We're in a museum. The three of them walked further into the museum, looking for the unnamed, unusual thing. It was not easy searching for something when you did not know what you were looking for in the first place. I'm getting a feeling this is all a bit of a waste of time, said Jamie. Don't be foolish, said the Doctor. The TARDIS is always right. You'll find out what it is any moment now. You mark my words. Do you think, began Victoria, that maybe, just possibly, the TARDIS was wrong? What? Spluttered the Doctor. Wrong? The TARDIS is infallible. It is utterly reliable, unlike that boy. Where's Jamie gone? Wandered off again, I suppose. Maybe we should just go back to the TARDIS, suggested the Doctor. But there was no answer. Victoria? Jamie? The Doctor was all alone. Oh, my giddy aunt! He exclaimed. The Doctor walked warily on, and round the next corner he came to a Himalayan exhibit. There was a leopard, and a mountain goat, and a yak, and a yeti. Well, that's odd, said the Doctor. I didn't think that yetis were... And then the yeti moved. Real? Yelled the Doctor. The yeti lunged at him, and the Doctor ran. Every way the doctor turned, he was confronted by yetis. He skidded into the medieval hall and knocked over a suit of armor. Crash! Which in turn knocked over another. Crash! The last suit in the row fell, revealing a yeti holding Victoria. Its pole axe struck the yeti and knocked it over. "My dear girl," cried the doctor, "are you all right?" "I am now," said Victoria. "But we have to rescue Jamie." The doctor looked down at the fallen yeti. "Look, it's not real. It is a robot. Somebody must be controlling them," said Victoria. "But who?" "Somebody with an evil plan," replied the doctor. "Somebody with a remote control that is controlling the yetis." "Will this help then?" asked Victoria, pulling out a TV remote. "I was watching telly earlier." "It's worth a try," said the doctor, aiming the remote control at the roaring yetis. The doctor pressed a button. The yetis fell silent, but continued to advance. "Sorry, silly me. That's the volume button," said the doctor. "Now which one is the off button? Hang on just a minute." "Quickly, doctor!" yelled Victoria. Suddenly, the yetis stopped in their tracks. "Hold on, doctor," cried Victoria. "It wasn't me," said the doctor. "I didn't press anything." "Let's find Jamie," suggested Victoria. The doctor and Victoria rushed through the museum until they found Jamie. He was standing next to a pyramid of glowing orbs. A yeti was serving him a drink on a tray. "I think these beasties have made me their king," he said. "It seems that this here pyramid is the yeti controller, and I'm now in control." "Oh, my giddy aunt!" exclaimed the doctor. "Well," said Jamie, when they were back in the TARDIS, "it was lucky I was here. This old thing wasn't going to do us much good." At that, he slapped the control desk. "I will not have you criticizing the TARDIS," cried the doctor. "It is a wonderful piece of engineering, a veritable box of wizardry, a faultless mechanical miracle. Now let's get out of here." The doctor pressed the start button and nothing happened. The TARDIS had run out of energy. "Magnificent," chuckled Jamie. "Faultless," laughed Victoria. "Oh, my giddy aunt," sighed the doctor. Dr. Eighth, originated by Roger Hargreaves. Written and illustrated by Adam Hargraves. Read by Chris Rush. While travelling through space and time in the TARDIS, the Doctor received a distress call from a spaceship. The ship is about to self-destruct. The Doctor landed aboard the ship and tried to persuade the spaceship's computer to stop, but the computer had made up its mind, and there was no arguing with it. "You're a very stubborn computer," cried the Doctor as he searched for the ship's crew. "And you are a very stubborn person," replied the computer. "The ship will now explode in 3 minutes. "How about adding on an extra minute?" asked the Doctor as he opened a hatchway with a sonic screwdriver. "The ship will explode in 2 minutes," replied the computer. "Blast you!" exclaimed the Doctor. "That is my plan," said the computer unhelpfully. The Doctor raced through the spaceship, leading the ship's crew to the TARDIS. "The ship will explode in 1 minute," declared the computer. "Quickly, everybody, inside!" cried the Doctor. 5, began the computer. The Doctor closed the TARDIS door. 4, continued the computer. The Doctor turned the TARDIS on. 3. The Doctor flipped a switch. 2. And that was the last they heard from the computer, as the TARDIS escaped the spaceship just in the nick of time. The Doctor looked around at the spaceship's crew. "I think everybody needs a holiday," he suggested. "And I know just the place." A very short time later, but a very long way across space, the TARDIS landed on a beach on Earth. But when the crew stepped out onto the beach, they all suddenly ran away. "Well, there's gratitude for you," asked the Doctor. "There's just no pleasing some people." And then he looked over his shoulder and saw why everybody had run away. "Oh my!" he exclaimed. "It's the Silurians." And indeed it was. A whole crowd of them advancing up the beach. "Well, what can I do for you?" asked the Doctor, hoping that there was nothing he could do for them. "This beach is ours," cried the Silurian leader. "Fair enough," said the Doctor. "I'll just be on my way." But the Silurians had something else in mind. They surrounded the Doctor and the TARDIS. "The Sea Devils have claimed this beach as theirs, but they live in the sea and we live on the land, so the beach must be ours," said the Silurian leader. "Only if you help us will we allow you to leave." Now, as you may or may not know, the Silurians and the Sea Devils were cousins, but not very close cousins, although they were equally ugly. The last thing the Doctor wanted to get involved in was an alien family squabble, but it seemed that he had no choice. The Doctor rode out to see what he could do. He asked the Sea Devils if they would give up the beach. "Never," bellowed the Sea Devil leader. "It is ours. When the tide goes in, the beach is covered with water, so it is ours." The Doctor rode back to the Silurians and reported the Sea Devil's answer. "But when the tide goes out, the beach is land, so it is ours." The Doctor scratched his head. It was quite a problem. And then he had an idea. "It is all very simple," explained the Doctor. "When the tide comes in, then the Sea Devils can swim here. And when the tide goes out, then the Silurians can play here. You can share the beach." The Silurians looked at the Sea Devils, and the Sea Devils looked at the Silurians. "Well, actually that does make sense," said the Silurian leader. "Yes, it does," agreed the Sea Devil leader. "Now that was easy," declared the Doctor. "How about a game of volleyball to celebrate?" he suggested, picking up a beach ball lying on the sand. "That's our ball," cried the Silurian leader. "No," argued the Sea Devil leader. "That is our ball." "Oh dear," sighed the Doctor. "Time to leave." Mr. Nosey by Roger Hargraves. Read by Chris Rush. Mr. Nosey liked to know about everything that was going on. He was always poking his nose into other people's business. Mr. Nosey was the sort of a person who, if they came upon a locked door, couldn't resist looking through the keyhole to see why the door had been locked. Mr. Nosey was the sort of a person who, if he found an unopened letter addressed to somebody else, would simply have to open it to find out what was inside. Mr. Nosey was the sort of a person who, if he was sitting reading his paper on a train, would much rather read the paper of the person sitting next to him. Naturally, as you might well imagine, Mr. Nosey was not very popular. People did not like the way in which Mr. Nosey would peek and pry into their affairs. They did not like it at all. But did that stop Mr. Nosey peeking and prying? It did not. Mr. Nosey lived in a funny, tall, thin house in a place called Tiddletown. The people of Tiddletown decided that Mr. Nosey was becoming much too nosy, and so they held a meeting to discuss what to do about him. "We must find some way of stopping him being so nosy," said old Mr. Chips, the town carpenter. "That's right," said Mrs. Washer, who ran the Tiddletown laundry. "He needs to be taught a lesson." "If only we could think of a way to stop him poking his nose into everything," said Mr. Brush, the painter. And then a small smile spread over his face. "Listen," he said, now grinning. "I have a plan." All his friends gathered round to listen to his plan. The following morning, Mr. Nosey was out walking along Tiddletown High Street when he heard somebody whistling behind one of the closed doors. "I wonder what's going on here," he thought to himself, and tiptoeing up to the door, he quietly opened it and peeped in. Splash! Went a very wet paintbrush right on the end of Mr. Nosey's nose, covering it with bright red paint. "Oh dear, I am sorry," said Mr. Brush, who was painting the inside of the door. "Poor Mr. Nosey had to go straight home to try and remove the red paint, which was very difficult and rather painful." Mr. Brush chuckled to himself. The plan had begun. The following day, Mr. Nosey was walking past the laundry when he heard somebody laughing on the other side of the wall. "I wonder what's going on here," he thought to himself, and, standing on tiptoe, he looked over the wall. Snap! Went a clothes peg right on the end of Mr. Nosey's nose. "Oh dear, I am sorry," said Mrs. Washer, who was hanging up clothes on a washing line on the other side of the wall. Poor Mr. Nosey removed the clothes peg and went off down the street, feeling extremely sorry for himself and for his poor red nose. Mrs. Washer chuckled to herself. The plan was working. The next day, Mr. Nosey was going past a fence when he heard hammering. "I wonder what's going on here," he thought to himself, and creeping very quietly to the end of the fence, he peeped round. Bang! Went a hammer right on the end of Mr. Nosey's nose. "Oh dear, I am sorry," said old Mr. Chips, who was nailing up a loose plank in the fence. Poor Mr. Nosey had to go home immediately and bandage his poor red sore nose. Mr. Chips grinned a broad grin. The plan was working very well indeed. The following day, Mr. Nosey was walking in the woods when he heard somebody sawing wood. "I wonder what's going on here," he thought to himself, and he crept up behind a tree. He was just about to peer out from behind the tree when it suddenly occurred to him that if he did, something very nasty might happen to his nose. And so he went on his way, without being nosy. Behind the tree, with a saw raised in his hand, stood Mr. Herd, the farmer. When he saw that Mr. Nosey had gone on his way without being nosy, he laughed and laughed and laughed. The plan had worked. Mr. Herd hurried into Tiddletown to tell everybody. The plan really had worked, because after that, Mr. Nosey stopped being nosy and soon became very good friends with everybody in Tiddletown. And that is the end of the story, except to say that if you were ever tempted to be as nosy as Mr. Nosey used to be, you'd better expect one thing: a sore nose. These books have been borrowed from the Kingston Library and will be returned later. Or not.